Okay, everybody, today I am really excited to show you what I have here. This is the Feral Girl Gamer Edition, which is basically the Feral Girl which will be available on Kindle, which you can get through Amazon. In addition to all the new artwork you're going to be getting in this edition, there is a gaming supplement for people who like role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. So here you have the new cover, which is exclusive to the Gamer Edition. If you look very closely, you can see something interesting in the character's eyes, in Thalana's eyes. Moving along, here we have a map of Anya. What's great about this is that on your Kindle device, you'll be able to click on it and you'll be able to zoom in and get a much more detailed image of the world. And this is where all my books take place, on this planet. But in this little green square, this is the Wildwood. And this is where the story takes place. And if we go to the next image, we can see that this is zoomed into this area here. And this is basically everywhere where Thalana goes on her journey. So she starts off in Ilmarinen, and then she travels south, and these campfires represent all the little places where she camped out for a while. Here I have the mountains of Ukko. These are the mountains that border Ilmarinen. This is what prevents people from discovering Ilmarinen. That's why it is kind of a hidden location, and why the Ilmarin people have basically been able to remain isolated for thousands of years. Here is a really great illustration that was drawn by my friend Heather Zanich, and it is just a rough sketch of Thalana facing off against a tyrant, which we recognize as a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but in the Ilmarin language, they just call it a tyrant. This is a scene that comes directly from the book. And as you can tell, she's very, very skinny here because she's starving and she's really just struggling to survive. So that gazelle is the first real meal that she's been able to get for a while. Here is a picture of Thalana trying to build a fire because, again, this is a survival story. And so it deals a lot with hunting and foraging and trying to make fire, because even though Ilmarinen has a pretty ideal climate, it does get a little cold during the night. Now, this is a drawing by my favorite person to work with, Alexei Lipatov, and it's just a little sketch he did of Thalana shooting backwards. Here is an illustration of Old Man Oak. And this is something that is new. It does not appear in the paperback edition, but it is something that's referenced a lot in the story. It's basically where Thalana's family lives. Thalana has 11 siblings, and she lives with her parents, and sometimes her aunts and cousins come to visit. And so what they have done is that they have built these little tree houses. And if you zoom in with a Kindle device, you'll be able to see these little tree houses, and there are these rope ladders that they climb up to sleep in the tree. And this is a giant tree. This tree is probably between like 500 and 1,000 feet tall. So it's very, very big. And in the background, you have the moon of Infinity, which is actually a gas giant that the world of Anya orbits. And of course, we have some pteranodons or pterodactyls, which is, common because dinosaurs exist in Anya. And over here in the corner, you have the Ilm flower, which is another major part of the story. And here it is. So this is the Ilm flower, and this has a lot of interesting properties. First of all, the Ilm only grows in Ilmarinen, which is why the guy who discovered the land of Ilmarinen, his name was Cages, when he discovered this land, he named this flower the Ilm flower, and then he named the land Ilmarinen, which means the land of the Ilm flower. And what's special about these flowers, aside from being pretty and rare, is that if you grind them up, and if you smoke them or if you drink them in a tea, they have medicinal properties, and they also have hallucinogenic properties. This is another recent sketch by Alexei, kind of a bonus, which was great because right now he is actually in the Ukraine, and the guy is still producing art, which I think is just amazing. He does have a Patreon page, so if you want to support this incredible Ukrainian artist, I highly recommend you go to Patreon, look up his name. It's Alexei Lipatov, and it's $5 a month, and you can support his art. Here's another beautiful drawing by Heather. It is Thalana, and she is looking up at a race of people called the Still Folk. They're also called the Green People. And these are basically plant-human hybrids. And if you want to know more about this race, you have to read the book. This part of the woods has a lot of exotic photofluorescent mushrooms and algae, and a lot of these giant plants and flowers, which actually exist in real life. So these are not fantasy inventions. These are just exotic plants that you can find in the world. They're just very rare, but they are giant flowers that do exist. This is probably the best piece of art that I think Alexei has ever done. He did this many, many years ago before I even started working on The Feral Girl. This was when The Feral Girl was kind of brewing in my brain, and I needed inspiration. And I told him that I had this vision in my head of Thalana crouched in the trees, and in the background there is a couple dinosaurs. And so he gave me this, and it's mind-blowing. I love the textures and the colors. Here's another picture called Spear Throw. It's Thalana dramatically throwing her spear at these pteranodons. This is a scene from a location in the book. These are the ruins of Urba. And Urba was a nation state that existed 10,000 years ago during the age of the Zoe, when Anya was more technologically advanced. This is before a cataclysm that sort of wiped out a lot of the technology. And if you want to know the details of that, you're just going to have to read my book. This specific part of Urba is called Tania. It is the industrial and technological city of Urba, the capital of Urba. But now Tania has fallen into ruin, and it has been overgrown by plants and trees. And over here you have a creature called the Arkan elk, which is a majestic white elk, which Thalana encounters. This piece was done by a guy named Leo Avero, and he also did a painting of Yafira, which appears in The Princess of Anya. This wasn't a commission, it's just a drawing that I found online. And I do this from time to time. Every now and then I will browse DeviantArt or Google, and I'll find a piece of art that perfectly captures a moment in my story. And so instead of asking someone to draw the picture for me, I basically just pay them for the rights to it. I say, this works. And this depicts a scene of the solstice night, which is the holiest night for the Omaran people. And it's when they basically build a big bonfire, and all the families of the land kind of gather around this bonfire. And what they do is they kind of pair off. They try to look for their soulmates from a previous life, because the Omar believe in reincarnation. And they believe that their lovers from a past life become their lovers throughout time. And so, unlike with us in our society where we say, until death do us part, with the Omar, you never part from your spouse. You are always together. And so during this ritualistic bonfire, they tell stories. They talk about their creation myths. They talk about the goddess who is named Alashia, who represents the world, the natural world. And they pair off and they make love, and they basically are mated for life. And after that, they kind of go off and they have children. Now, this is another piece by Heather. It is Thalana basically getting high. And this was another critical part of the story. And here you see her holding the Ilm flower. And you just have to read the story to find out what's going on in this scene. This is the first picture of Thalana that Alexei ever did. I think it captures the character really well, except I think she's a little older here and a little taller. So this is kind of the character after she's grown up a little bit. So here she's really an adult woman, whereas for most of the book she's pretty young. I would say she's maybe around, 15, 16, 17. But here looks like she's in her 20s. And this is the end of the story. This final piece is by Heather. And what I really love about this is it really just encapsulates everything that is in the story. So you have the Arkanelk, you have the Ilm flower up top, you have Thalana, who is wearing clothes because, again, if you read the story, you'll know why. And this is her at the beach, her first time coming to the sea, and you can see the two moons of Anya in the background. So this is really, really just represents everything that my story is about. This is Surviving the Wildwood. It's a Surviving the Wildwood role-playing adventure game. It is compatible with Dungeons & Dragons, although what I found out by someone, I can't actually mention the word Dungeons & Dragons anywhere in this supplement, but it is D&D compatible. And the rules are pretty simple. It's a very simple little adventure. You could probably run it in a day or even in a few hours. So here you have the story mode, heroic mode. There's different modes of play based on how challenging you want the game to be. As you play, each day of the game is broken down into foraging, hiking, and hunting. So this is basically Thalana as she would be in the book, because in the book, she is not a badass warrior. She's basically a young girl just struggling to survive. But if you prefer, you can play a more powerful version of Thalana, a 9th level version where she is a 5th level ranger, 4th level rogue, and she has a lot more abilities. So you would use this sheet if you want to basically go around and have a lot more fighting and action. And these are the rules for making an Ilmarin character. So if you want to make an Ilmarin character, a race that doesn't wear clothes and get certain advantages, get certain racial bonuses for being naked, here are the rules for that, which you can pretty much use. If you have a very open-minded dungeon master and he thinks it's cool that you want to be a naked character, then you can do that. So also talk about their culture and society here. And then also rules for being a half-man, which is basically just a Bigfoot, ape-like creature. Now here is a map of the Wildwood that is broken down into grid lines, because with the grids, you'll be able to track your movement per day. Here is a random events table that you can use to determine what happens as you go through the map. The goal of the game basically is just to get to the end of the Wildwood and just escape the Wildwood, just like Thalana does in the story. And I really recommend that you read the story first before you actually play the game. Here is a encounter table that shows you all the different creatures that exist in the Wildwood. Most of these come from the monster manual, so you will need the monster manual to play this. But all the creatures that are not in the monster manual, all the creatures that are unique to Anya, I have little asterisks here, and here I have stats for them. So I have the Arkanelk, I have the Blackbird Wasp, the Chobo, the Glider. All these things are creatures that Thalana encounters in the story. And I have a little sizing chart here so you get a sense of how big these guys are in comparison to Thalana. Although she is pretty short, she's a little over 5 feet tall. So the Muck Tortoise, here are the still folk that we saw earlier. Here is a Titan, which is basically my term for a Brachiosaurus. Although it doesn't need to be a Brachiosaurus, but it's a Brachiosaurus-like dinosaur. And here is a Tyrant, which, again, very similar to a T-Rex. You have the Vorgaven, which is kind of a snake-like crocodile, which is unique to the Wildwood, Wildwood Gar, the Woolly Horn, and finally, the Ziff. You have rules for ending the game. If you have a creative dungeon master, you can take Thalana and you can send her off into other parts of Anya, or you can have her go to different settings within the Dungeons & Dragons universe. I mean, maybe she'll end up in Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or Kryn, who knows. And then, of course, these are basically information about the world of Anya. And so I think you can reference it, a Dungeon Master can reference it if they want help with the lore of the game. But it also, tells you a lot about how, night and day works in Anya. This is true for all my books. There's 2 seasons in Anya, High Moon and Low Moon. There's cycles, which is basically a 10-day week. And then you have A Brief History of Anya by Emma Ravenborn. Emma's a character who appears in Ages of Anya, my first Anya book. And I should caution you, though, there are a lot of spoilers. But if you have read through these novels, or if you don't care about spoilers, then this kind of breaks down the history of Anya from, it's pretty much a 20,000 year history. And then, finally, we have a little advertisement here for Ages of Anya, because Thalana's story does continue in Ages of Anya. And if you get the special edition, which is also on Kindle, you'll see there's a lot of great artwork in this Kindle version as well. So that's basically it for The Feral Girl. I really hope you pick this up, and I hope you enjoy it. And you will be able to get it exclusively on Amazon. And if you do read it and enjoy it, you can review it on Amazon or Goodreads. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.